All right, welcome to Hunting for Silver Linings for this Monday, September 21 of 2020, hosted today by myself, Corey Hart, from the Great Lakes region here in the United States of America, um, under Startup Grind, the world's largest startup community. With 600 plus chapters in over 125 countries, we do operate with a mission to educate, inspire, and connect. And we're driven by three key values: make friends, not contacts, help others before you help yourself, and give before you take. One reason why we're doing this whole tour around the planet is because the pandemic has been and will continue to be a great global leveler. And as entrepreneurs, we need to do our very best for our businesses, our teams, and families. And to do so, we need to be informed, rational, analytical, and rigorous in our thinking. We also need to learn to control our biases as they emerge in various circumstances. We do this every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we track the intersection of facts, biases, and action through our review of global financial markets, usually with George, my colleague, who's not here today, alongside check-ins and real talk with Startup Grind chapter directors, entrepreneurs, and ecosystem stakeholders from around the world. And our goal is to find those rare silver linings, because no one has a crystal ball, but if we keep our eyes and ears open and pay attention, we may be able to see around the bend and spot those silver linings. You can catch these recorded events at startupgrind.com/grand-rapids, or you can check out the Startup Grind YouTube channel. Comments made and views expressed by all participants in this podcast are not intended to invite or incite individuals, entrepreneurs, investors to buy or sell financial assets, real assets, commodities, or futures and/or options. This purpose is just to educate and to inform, not to trade or to invest. If you feel compelled, please call your broker and your psychologist. And remember, risk is everywhere, even when you think that you're not taking a risk. So with that nice little intro, I would like to introduce James. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a great opportunity right now, especially, during the COVID pandemic, that we've got a little time to actually sit back and kind of reevaluate the situation and see where to put effort at for the future. And
Yeah.
that's what I think, one of the things that's going to be really interesting is seeing the changes that are going to be coming out of this. It's kind of like the analogy of the fire burning down a forest and giving growth to new rises and new structures coming up. And so I definitely think that that's going to be, as bad as this may be, the plus side in the long run that comes out of it. So you asked me for a little bit of background. So I'm from New Orleans originally. I'm the New Orleans Startup Grind chapter director. I've been in this position for about 2 years now, and just got a co-director brought on. And so she's taking the cohort right now, and she's going to be dynamite. I can't wait to work with her more on these projects. I'm from New Orleans originally. I lived here most of my life. But I did go and lived in Tennessee for about 9 years when I was in graduate school. So I got a degree in biology, moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, got a PhD in biochemistry, and then I moved back here when Katrina hit. So I was living in Tennessee at the time. Katrina hit, the city flooded out, and a lot of my friends and family lost their homes, and I knew it was time to come home. So I moved back here. I worked as a postdoc for a number of years, and I ended up developing a biotech program at one of our community colleges. And when I did this, it started putting me in touch with our industry partners. And I learned that I wanted to move out of strict education and into the industry and business side. Because I truly believe there's a disconnect between education and industry. And a lot of people that you'll talk to will say this, but I've experienced it from both sides. I've experienced it from the education side, where you say, look, our industry people want this, this, and this. And the people on the education side say, well, we do this. And they'll tell you, well, yeah, we're listening to industry, but they're really not. They're just, oh yeah, we'll take it under advisement. Yeah, we'll do that. And they really don't build anything curriculum-wise that meets true industry standards. And I'll tell you, the way that I got around that is I started hiring people from industry to build curriculum for me. And that worked out all the way until the point where the education people said, you're taking our jobs away from us and and so that's what it made me just sit there and kind of throw my hands up in the air and go, well, I don't know what to do. I'm not taking your jobs away. You're just not teaching what the students need. You're not hiring is basically what it comes down to. And if you're not hiring people and you're not talking to the people that hire people, you don't really have an understanding what they want. I mean, literally, I had teachers that were teaching techniques in the lab that the industry hasn't done in 20 years. And they were teaching this because they think it's important. And I'm going, no, it's not. So that's kind of the long and short of it. Because of my interest in the industry side, especially in the biotech industry, but really all industry here in New Orleans. But it started with my close working with the biotech industries. I realized I wanted to do something more in business and become, at least fluent in that side of things. And so when the startup grind director position opened up, I thought it was a great opportunity to move more in that direction. And as you know, it is an incredible global community. I just can't tell you how, just the experience, how great it is. So that's I guess the beginnings of my background there.
Well, I appreciate you covering especially that education component, because that's something that that we cover with everyone that we speak to. It's interesting when we check in with the different leaders around the globe where their mismatch is, if there is, and sometimes there's not, with what the talent is learning versus what the industry needs, right?
Yes.
And there are some regions around the planet where it's completely homegrown. Universities are just churning out like bricks, and
Yep.
for old masonry when people are now building with steel, So that's really interesting to hear, and glad that you led off with that. Also, do want to hear a little bit about some of the other sectors other than biotech. So what are some of the more popular sectors in your region?
So the programming sector is coming along very well here. So we have a lot of new industry development in the high-end electronics, internet, and programming sectors. So we have several businesses that have opened up here in New Orleans. There are still plans to develop a real high-speed hub. And New Orleans has this since Katrina, it's been building on a dream to redevelop itself into technology, just technology. And so there's several different organizations here that are doing a ton of promotion for business development. And in fact, if you like, Launchpad used to be located here, which is one of the premier accelerators and combined workspaces. They actually, because of COVID-19, they just shut down the New Orleans location. I was really upset over that, but I understand there's a lot of changes that are going on. We have the New Orleans Business Alliance. We have GNO Inc. that all foster business development here. We have in the city, we also have Idea Village. Tulane has the LePage Center for Business Development. So there's just really a ton of programs, and I know I'm actually forgetting a bunch of them. We have Propeller. Like I said, there's just so many, and environment here, like literally, I can find resources for almost anything that I want in the city, especially at the early stage of business development, in basically any of the fields, any of the tech type fields, and really not even only in the tech fields. We also have a really good food and beverage industry, and that's, again, New Orleans is known for that. We have over at Holy Cross College, we have a food science program that's really dedicated to building a big time food tech incubator here in the city. So there's several opportunities like that are happening in the city.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially, and I think most folks globally would understand that there are some challenges, especially with the tourism industry, specifically during this time. That coupled with natural storms and so on,
Hmm.
just giving a
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 punch to to the region. So um,
Yes, there's definitely, again, New Orleans was built really on the hotel tourism industry and then the oil industry back in the, I guess, the 80s, 90s. And now it is trying to rebrand. If you move outside of New Orleans towards the coastline, we are really trying to rebrand it and work on, coastal restoration projects and become a forerunner in those types of situations. So that's another big thing. That's not directly in New Orleans, but there are several big efforts that are going on, and there's several companies that are built around carbon sequestering here or natural reef development, those types of things in and around the city. From here all the way to the coast to Baton Rouge, all the way really to Shreveport, which is
yeah,
the uppermost part of the state. Um,
yeah, the
but yeah, we realized that the hotel and tourism industry is great, but we also need to build something else that's a little bit, I guess, maybe not lasting, but a different direction. You can't just put your eggs in one basket.
sure.
Kind of the way to think about it.
Well, you also have to make sure that you still have a New Orleans for people to visit, just like Venice, Italy, and other regions, the Maldives.
Hmm.
There are a lot of spots around the planet that are precariously positioned, and as we understand it, Mother Nature, she could really give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like um, uh, there's
Yeah.
that fun image of a bridge that was built, now like over a river that no longer runs under it.
Hmm.
It's just so. Anyway, and now so specifically with what you're talking about, the carbon sequestering and
Hmm.
climate tech initiatives like Amazon's announcement of $2 billion fund specifically to
Hmm.
find not necessarily
Hmm.
just for their own survival. They understand it's necessary,
Yeah.
uh, and they can't necessarily innovate inside anymore. It's just too big and too cumbersome of an organization, and
Hmm.
all the really great innovations happening in spots like where you're at. Um, so that's really exciting that hopefully you might have some people that can go and grab a chunk of that cash and bring it into the ecosystem there.
Yeah, it creates an interesting question here. So what I've seen so far is New Orleans is really really good at the startup side. So we have a ton of programs and ways to develop businesses on the small scale. And now I think we're starting to really evaluate and look into how do we transition to the larger scale. And I think that that's kind of a good thing with COVID-19, because in the past, one of the things that I was always told is, our big time investors, for your big capital investor companies, you're not going to find them here in New Orleans. So you would have to a lot of times be confronted with the choice of, well, do I stay in New Orleans and continue to bootstrap and do what I'm doing, or do I make the move to one of the major clusters across the country? And you see, you smile because you see this question before, and I think now with the idea of COVID-19 coming along, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but this is just something that I've been kind of milling through in the back of my mind, is that it's opened up a lot of those other opportunities, that now there's so much more work that goes on through digital media like web conferencing, that it does make it easier for people to understand, you don't have to be in my backyard to work with me. And
Uh-huh.
so this globalization, I think, is rapidly changing because of this. And so that to me is a plus, because it allows places like New Orleans to become more competitive in those types of situations. At least ideally, that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like part of my background is I'm in the Great Lakes. Fairly recently returned to the Great Lakes region. Previous to that, I was in California for 10 plus years. And even being in California, I was in San Diego, joined a food startup. But to raise, I had to physically move to the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now I'm helping startups here in my region in the Great Lakes, connecting them with investors globally, and it's not a problem.
Yeah.
And they're able to do investor meetings like nonstop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's less of a full-time job because there's not so much travel involved. Um, and it's yeah, this is a really great opportunity. And while we are seeing a lot of supply chains, and George and I talk about this a lot with our guests, is a lot of these the supply chains of durable goods and manufacturing, a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
food is that those types of things are shrinking, but the globalization of ideas and finance is really great. We see this most notably in the news with all the innovation around medicine, like our vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
The globe is trying to come up with, and then also just the international coordination of central banks and just evolving this whole monetary policy idea of like, what is money? What is it for? Like, what's public health? Like all these big questions are global questions, and it's not just the Gates Foundation trying to knock it down anymore. Now it's the planet, so
Sure.
it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Now, you touched on something that we do like to talk about. You said, there's a lot of resources available to entrepreneurs if they have an idea and want to get plugged into the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am I'm a resident, I'm a graduate, I have a good idea, I've got a little bit of traction, because you also talked about like the investment piece. So now
Mm-hmm.
I've plugged into one of these co-working spaces or incubators or whatever. Is it still even with a little bit of like traction? So is it fairly easy to find some investment? Is it a kind of a closed network and people kind of know folks and they're like, I've heard about you, that's exciting, like let's talk? Or is it friends and family only, and then after that you're just like praying?
Still a lot of friends and family, yes.
Yeah.
They do have so if we do have, at least before COVID-19, we had a lot of really good pitch competitions. And New Orleans actually sponsors every year, and this is sponsored through Idea Village, which is one of the biggest accelerators and longest running accelerators here in the city. Um, and they're a great bunch of people. If you want, I can send you the links to their information. But they're kind of the ones that organize a lot of the startup ecosystem here. And they actually used to organize, and I don't know if it's going to be virtual this year. Last year it ended right because of COVID-19, was coming out right when we were doing this. But Idea Village sponsors what they call Entrepreneur Week. And it's literally an entire week in the city where we bring together all of the entrepreneur sides, and they host it at one of the major hotels. And it's a big conference because one of the things they do that I really love is they go out in the city, and so they'll ask every one of the other organizations to hold satellite events during the week as part of Entrepreneur Week. And so these can be pitch competitions. So I've seen at the Goldman Sachs that they've done for high school students pitch competitions where there was prizes offered. And some of these pitch competitions, one of them was dealing with recycling of shoes. And I mean, this is something that you've probably seen somewhere before, but these are high school students that were putting this together.
Yeah.
The other one of them was baby formula, that they were organic baby formula. So there's some really good ideas. So there are at those very early stages when you're looking at things like pitch competitions and getting recognition out there. There's a lot to it. We do have some angel fund investing here in the city. We don't have a ton of that serious capital investing though that you're going to find in the major hubs.
Sure. So to that end, on that point, like what is that gap? Like what does that look like? So if I can find friends and family, I can raise like 5, 10, 15, 20K that way. I'm
Hmm.
picking the bushes.
Yeah.
When it's time to like shake the trees, and open the mausoleums, go for that
Yeah.
old money. Where's the gap? Where is it the 50K round? Is it the 200K? Is it like
Ooh,
what does your
I
region need help with?
that's a good question because I think it's all over the place. And what I mean by that is a lot of our so one of the things that we've done really well, at least with a lot of the companies that I've personally talked with and worked with, is they've worked really good into SBIR funding. And I don't know if you've come across that, but SBIR funding can really fill in a lot of those gaps, at least in the early stages, until you get to the you know uh, millions and over type rounds of investment. So SBIR and I'll just kind of mention it really quick. Most of the people that you talk with know this, but it's Small Business Innovative Research Awards. And all of the major government agencies, so the Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Department of Education, um, they all have a set aside, I think it's 5% of their budget has to go to SBIR funding. And they put out typically for most of these agencies requests for proposals. And so the Army will have or the Department of Defense will have a standing request for proposals for anybody that'll come up with new types of active wear that will store energy or something like that. So they're constantly looking for ideas for their goals. And in fact, I've got a friend of mine that runs IGL, which is Internet Gaming League, and she teaches computer programming to young students outside of or in the city that normally wouldn't have the opportunities to have that. So they do gaming competitions for those students, but they also teach them coding and programming. And so her and I were talking about this the other day, and I was looking through it at SBIR because she wants to start teaching them a lot of the business and entrepreneurial aspects also. And so while we were talking, I said, well, why don't we find an SBIR as a way to kind of set the framework for this? And because that's one of the things that's nice about it. If you find it, you can find an SBIR in almost any idea that you have if you're creative enough with the work you're doing. So there's a part of one of those government agencies, if you look hard enough, that's going to be interested in almost every idea. And it's amazing. I had a friend of mine. So back to her. While we were talking about this, I just started looking through it, and I said, "Look, there's a Department of Defense that's looking for somebody to generate algorithms for drone clustering and analyzing enemy drone swarms, and then real time, clustering your drone swarm." And I told her, I said, this is in a lot of ways like something you would find in a video game. And so why not teach it to these students as part of your video game coding part? And then you could also develop this as a separate set for this. And so we've been talking about that, but there's ideas like this literally all day and night long. It's incredible. I've got another friend of mine that's an amateur saltwater aquarium expert. And he tells me, he says, well, we were talking about this the other night. And he says, well, do they have anything in aquariums or coral? And I said, I don't know. Let me look. So we spent about a half an hour. And there's like 4 different SBIRs looking for people that can make basically coral stem cells, or people that can do the microfragmentation of corals and the growth of them. So, the other one was looking for a new sunblock that doesn't harm coral. So,
Right.
again, when you think about this, originally I would have said there's nothing there. Now, the good thing about SBIR funding is that your round one, phase one is, I think it's up to $1.5 million. I think you could go with that. And then after that, your phase two, which is your commercialization side, can go pretty much anywhere if you're creative with it.
Sure.
So a lot of people have used the SBIR system to fill in those gaps between your bootstrapping, your friends and family, and that next level where you reach to the angel investors.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, part of that investment thing and the different gaps lends itself to the mindset of the region, because there are some places around the planet where friends and family is just not where you go because entrepreneurism is just not
Mhm.
it's not a thing. They're like, you're silly, like you need to go get a job with the government, like you have to be a member of the party, stuff like that, or like whatever it is. But and New Orleans is that region specifically, not just the South in general, but there's the U.S. is a fairly young country. However, the port down there and
Mhm.
the multicultural like history makes it a very unique mindset and unique region in the U.S.
Mhm.
ecosystem. And so you do have um, well, this is another reason why we do this is because there's stereotypes, right? So the stereotype is
Sure.
the deep South, like rooted in one side, one kind of thinking. And if you don't fall in line with that step, then you're just irrelevant. People aren't going to pay attention to you, and it's like, okay, you gotta get out of here, son. So like how much like what is the mindset down there right now, especially with all of, and this is a two-part question. So there's a general mindset, as far as like how do I fit in, and then there's the, all right, we've been beaten around by natural disaster and then now COVID. Just to, as an anecdote, in response, potential responses, like we spoke to the chapter director in Pizza Lucca, Italy. And this is shortly after the first wave went through Italy. And
Mhm.
he had the week before, his guest for his fireside chat was a local founder who was in a coma for 2 weeks. And, and that's just the coma. It wasn't the preceding few weeks was also illness.
Right.
So the founder of his company woke up and he's like, okay, what's going on with my business? What's going on with the planet? And
Mhm.
there's bodies in the streets. There's bodies on church pews. Like it was pretty bad in some cities in Italy there. And when I asked about the mindset, he's like, we're very optimistic.
Mhm.
He said, well, we've seen the worst, and we're better prepared now than we've ever been. Um,
So I think that you're always going to have people with all of these types of situations, natural disasters, coastal erosion, all the problems that you're going to run into. That you're always going to have a group of people that say, look, it's not worth it here anymore. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm going here. You're always going to have those situations. I've found that New Orleans is a very binary type city. And what I mean by that is if you've ever stayed here for any period of time, it's almost immediate that you either love it and say, look, I'm never going to leave this place,
right.
or you sit there and go, I got to get out. I just it's really one of the strangest things. um, I've got friends of mine that have moved here with wife and family, and one of the spouses will sit there and say, I just can't stay here, and the other one will say, I love it here, I never want to leave. And so it's a very binary situation like that. I think in general, you're always going to have hardships that come along, and there's always going to be that never perfect condition that's conducive to your growth. And the question always comes in, it's this weighing situation. um, are you able to build enough even in the face of those other hardships that are there. There's, it's easy to look at other people that are successful and say, well, you didn't have any hardships. Everything was really easy for you.
Yeah.
It worked perfect. But, for me, it's hard. I've got all these issues. And I know that it's easy to do that, but, I think that, if you want to be successful, you have to, kind of analyze that in your mind and say, okay, I know that there are problems here, but I want to be part of the solution to make things better.
Sure.
And that's again, for me, one of the reasons that I wanted to move back here is I'm from here originally. I've always loved the city growing up here. The and plus I can't stand the cold weather. If I move further up north, if you want to know the truth, I'd much rather it, hotter than colder. But, I when I moved back here, I said I want to be part of the solution to make things better here. And I've become really, enamored, I guess, in a way, and really a supporter and believer in the idea of New Orleans rebranding itself as a true technology-based hub. And I've met a lot of incredible people that have shown me that vision here along the way. Places like so we've got a couple of really great things going. So we have two major medical centers here, so medical schools in the city. We have LSU Health Science Center, and we also have Tulane Med School. We're one of the only cities in the country that have that. And their tech transfer offices do an incredible job with that. There's so many innovations that come out of those situations. Along with that, like I said, the other parts like Tulane has what they call the LePage Center, which does an incredible job in entrepreneurship, and Loyola has their own entrepreneurship programs. So the colleges that we have here have really put a lot of time and thought into building those startups, and they all work pretty much with a lot of the Steve Blank models of Lean Launchpad, which is really, Steve Blank was the very first thing that I read when I was in academia dealing with business entrepreneurship. And it just, something clicked with me the second that I started reading his work. I mean, you could literally, it reads like a story.
Yeah.
And, it just made so much sense. And especially the way you look at it, it's basically like scientific research. You have a hypothesis of how your product's going to be sold, who's going to buy it, and you go out and you test that hypothesis before you build the whole thing. And so it all clicked with me right then and there when I started reading Steve Blank stuff. So he's the reason that I moved out of traditional academic research.
Okay.
So I don't know. I kind of meandered through that question. So sorry.
Well, it's fine, but I mean, all of it. When we talk about the mindset of a region, you talk about academia being like at least part like on the curve, on the wave, not
Some
like
parts are.
it, not too far ahead of it. Also, do you find that there's a deeper resilience among the general population in a region like that? Those who do decide to stay, those who come, they go, they land, they're like, oh yeah, these are my people. I'm here to stay. I don't care what happens.
I do kind of think that the people that do stay here, they're in it for the long haul, and they're not saying, well, I mean, of course there are people that are saying, well, if we get hit with another storm, I'm moving then. But a lot of people, are sitting there saying, look, I'm staying here to make this better. The city has just such a flavor to it, and beyond the food flavor.
Sure, yeah.
There's so many festivals here in the city, or there were before COVID-19. Literally every weekend, you could go to, Bayou Boogaloo, French Quarter Fest, literally, crawfish fest. They have beer fest. Every weekend there was a festival in one part of the city, or right outside of the city that you could go to. So there was always something that was, it keeps people, here connecting with each other and meeting each other. So that was a big part of the city. And again, I do think that that's going to come back, of course.
Sure.
It's probably never going to be exactly the same, but that's the way things move on. You can't sit in a time warp.
No. um, so now, like, we also like to talk about the issues of equity and so on in the various ecosystems around the planet, and it's different everywhere around the world. But New Orleans is one of those towns where, in the English language, we have this phrase like the wrong side or the other side of the tracks, where in New Orleans there are literally tracks that divide the city. And so, like, how is the tech industry like handling handling issues of equity and diversity, gender and race?
So, just like anywhere else in the world, those problems still exist here. There are many efforts to fix those problems, though. There's a big push in basically all sectors to make sure that it's inclusive, and that's the thing that I've always found to be the important part is how do you make sure that you are opening the door for everybody. It's not singling out one part of the community and saying, look, we want you, but it's how do we open up the door for everybody and make sure that you generate an environment that everybody feels comfortable in being in. A lot of our tech companies are built with that motto in mind.
Uh-huh.
A lot of them are striving towards that, and so we have a large amount of founders in the city that are female minority founders, and what they bring to the table is amazing. The experiences that you learn just from the times that I've sat down and talked to them, it's amazing. So again, one of my very good friends that runs the IGL Foundation, the experiences that I've gotten from her. In fact, I'm planning on having her do one of our fireside chats with us in the next 2 months. I'm looking at November for her to do this because she's setting up a couple of things. But just the drive that I have just picked up from just talking with her, it's incredible. And so it's really inspiring when you see that interaction there. I think that's again the big thing is you can learn from all of those experiences.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an October event scheduled?
So I do have an October event that I scheduled this a while back, and it's with Mike Moyer, and he's the author of the book Slicing Pie. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but I'm really excited over this. Again, I've been thinking about for a long time a way to take community college high-end technology-based programs. And so community colleges across the country have about 300 high-end tech-based programs where they deal with high electronics development, photonics, nanotech, and they have the equipment, the training, the teachers, and the students that can act as technicians in those courses. So basically, it's a business in a box for you if you're in those fields. But the problem is that they don't have a ton of funding for those things. And so I've been thinking about how do you combine businesses with those resources. So a lot of startup businesses, if you ask them, you know, what's your problem? So where is it your very beginning stage? Where's your problem going to be? Especially in the high-end tech fields, it's going to be access to equipment. And you know, so I need this type of equipment. I need this type of laser router, or you know, I need this type of PCR machine in the biotech industry. So how do you get that? Well, they don't have the capital for it, but these community colleges have that type of equipment, and it's underutilized in those community colleges. So if you pair them up together, it could make a way for you to train the students in actual the business work. And so my point with this is in putting this model together that I've been playing with for a while, I kept thinking about a need to have the students become owners of the company. And one of my friends that's the head of the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce quoted this, and he's the one that said, that you go from education to entrepreneur at this program. And I love that tagline. So with Mike Moyer's model of slicing pie, and then so I am bringing it all the way back around to this, it's a fair equity split for new business development. So traditionally, if you and I were going to start a business, we'd sit down somewhere and we'd say, okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this. Let's do a 50-50 split. And that's great for right now, but 6 months later, when you're putting in 40 hours a week and I'm putting in 1 hour a week, you're going to say, well, wait, is this really fair anymore? You know, it sounded great to begin with. And so Mike's model is a continuously evolving equity split, that you're continuously putting in and logging your hours or your investment, if it's, you know, per diem when you travel, or your money that you're putting into the company is hard cash. And you log that down, and it gives you what they call slices of pie. And so basically you take the total number of slices that you have and divide it by the total number of slices in the pie from everybody that's your founder. And that gives you your percent ownership of the company when you go to your next round of capital.
Sure.
So it's an incredible model. I love it. And I started talking with them about how do you adapt this for students that are, let's say, taking a class, but they want to become owners of a new fledgling company, that they're willing to put in more time than this. So that's my next, you know, one that I'm having in October. And then in November, Kimberly Thomas is the one that I'm setting up right now that runs the IGL Foundation. She's going to be a really great speaker also. I just can't wait. I've already gone 2 or 3 times into IGL. Her brother, Derek Thomas, was the one that started it. And I had planned to have Derek in last year, and unfortunately he passed away last year. And I was really, I just started to really get to know him and learn, you know, I mean, he was a person that just had a vision. And the second you talk to him, you could just see it. And it was sad to hear that, but Kimmy has done just an incredible job picking this up and bringing this vision and adding herself to that vision. So, you know, the passion that she has in the work she does shines through when you talk to her. That's the easiest way to put it. I mean, and I'll tell you, when I first came out of academia into the business side, I always thought that if you have a great idea, that's all it takes.
Right.
And what I've learned is that it's not just your idea. People are investing in you. And so you may have a great idea, but they may say, no, you're not the person to do this. And so that's a big learning experience. I know a lot of people say, well, didn't you know that? That's really simple. That people invest in you, not just your ideas. But I didn't know this. I really didn't. And so when you meet somebody again like Kimmy, that you could just see this idea. She's going to be successful at what she does. They have that ability to pivot and make things work.
That's awesome. I just signed up for your chapter there, so I get the
Cool.
the updates. I'm interested to learn a little bit more about both those folks these next couple months. So
Excellent.
we're running a little we're up against some time here, so
Okay.
we have the last question that we always ask everyone. Now, how long
This is gonna be the hardest, huh? This is the hardest question.
Oh no,
I
yeah,
know it's gonna be.
it's pass fail. Sorry.
Yeah.
How long have you been a chapter director?
So almost 2 years now.
Okay, all right. So
Yep.
I'm a baby. I just started last December, and
Okay.
first event,
Mm-hmm.
So now with and sometimes as directors, if we're from a very busy, bustling city or region that is known for innovation and whatnot, there's a lot of other folks that say, "Oh man, James is all set. He's fine. He's off to the races, whatever." But James might actually need or want some help. So what can the overall global pile of chapter directors do for you, James, either personally, individually, or for your chapter? What can we do for you?
So I think the biggest thing that I've run into here, and I'm bad at this, and I'm admittedly bad at this. I'm a horrible salesperson when it comes down to it. Okay. In fact, I've had friends of mine tell me that I must just be allergic to money. I kid you not about this. I've got friends of mine that laugh about this. So my point with that is when I've gone in to meet with people about becoming sponsors, partners, a lot of times when I go in to meet with them, it's interesting because I met with some of the sports teams, things like that in the city, and during the conversation, they were kind of like, "Well, we were hoping that you would sponsor us." And I'm going, "No, I was hoping you all would
Right.
be interested in sponsoring us at our events." And so I really, the help that I need is, almost a playbook for this. So how do you go about, finding let's say three leads for this, and then tailoring and bringing a pitch to them that's going to work. And that's one of the reasons that I had asked Serena Phoenix to come on board as a co-director. Is she's the times that I've talked to her, and again, the head of the Chamber of Commerce here in New Orleans, Ben Johnson, was the one that originally said, you've got to talk with her. It is because her background is marketing, and so I'm hoping that she can add some of those things that I lack to the chapter, because that's the biggest thing. It's as far as resources go, before COVID-19, there was tons of organizations that would sponsor us hosting the events there. I mean, literally every organization in the city. And that was one of my questions when I came on board as a chapter director, is how do you plan to work with these other organizations that are there in the city? And I originally said, well, I hope and I want to make sure it's a collaboration. And I found that all of the organizations in the city have bent over backwards to collaborate with me and work with me as Startup Grind. So that's been an incredible positive, but finding the resources there financially to make things work has been kind of the biggest issue. And I'm sure that a lot of chapter directors have the same, questions, problems there. So a playbook for this, that's very methodic. Okay, let's go through and let's search for 3 different, local sponsors.
Uh-huh.
And this is how you tailor your pitch to these 3 sponsors. This is what has worked for other chapter directors. I think that would be a big plus. And I know the cohorts that we run in training do a lot of that, but I'm almost thinking about just a single class in this, that's
So were you at Global in February?
I could not make it this year. Last year I was at Global, which I was so sad that I couldn't make it this last year. It's an amazing event. It's like literally being at backstage at a rock concert,
Yeah.
and meeting and literally like meeting all the most famous people in the world. I mean it's incredible.
Yeah, there was at the Directors Summit there was a special session on this topic, and the director in Monterey is someone who had like probably the most input for the group.
Okay.
However, in the cohort system, which I was part of the first cohort that went through the director training.
Oh, I was on that too.
Okay. So yeah. So
Yep.
there was some coverage of this, but you're right. So like not everyone's a salesperson, and that's okay. And one of the best things anyone can learn as a founder or a leader is go out and find people that have the energy and the skills that you don't. So if you do have that in your co-director, I would, and this is just me personally, how I handle a lot of folks when they say, "Hey, this is a challenge that I'm confronted with." I'll reply with, "Well, there's no one better than you to build that playbook there, James." So, like, especially with your co-director coming on board, it's something that a lot of chapter directors do struggle with. And there's a lot of sales books out there. There's a lot of sales methodologies. Obviously, there are different cultures around the planet, and what works for one region doesn't always work exactly the same in another region. But there are some general things, that might be similar. And so, yeah, it'd be really great if you would volunteer your co-director to help build that playbook. That is her expertise. And
I'll talk to her. She's actually taking the cohort that's starting today, I think. So,
yeah, I would suggest that the two of you would be have a great workshop to present at the next Directors Summit, especially since it's going to be all virtual in February. And I think you have more than enough time to get that done.
It's a great idea. I will actually talk to her today about this. I was planning on calling her after the meeting, her meeting today, and just see how everything went. And that's a great idea, though. Because again, I think that's something. You talk about the idea of books and everything. This may sound a little short-sighted on me, and it may be, but I don't want an entire I don't want an entire curriculum on this. I want something very tailored and focused to this, and so it's kind of like I don't want to be an expert at this. I just want something that's going to accomplish the goals of this.
Well, if Serena is the marketer that you're saying that she is, then she's going to approach this community with a lot of questions. All right, she's going to just naturally be like, okay, well, what do we do? Our value proposition, like what, who are our customers? How are our customers? What are the psychographics? She's going to approach all, like, just being a new co-director.
Yeah,
she's going to be figuring out all the things that go into like what it's going to take to have that playbook. So yeah, I would say that maybe that's Corey Hart's personal challenge to James and Serena.
Well,
But then you could also, like I said, there's the director in Monterey. So part of building that playbook might be reaching
uh,
out to the director of Monterey. You've got
hmm
Colin over in Edinburgh that does a really good job with that.
yeah.
Israel, like the Tel Aviv
hmm
chapter, does a really fantastic job of
I
ships. Um,
yeah.
then Tom Dennison
Yes.
in Chicago,
Yep. Yep.
Henry Sue up in Vancouver. So
hmm
yeah, so like between a couple half-hour things, even Chris Hogg in Columbia, Maryland.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, that's just off the top of my head from my bopping around the planet, talking to people. Some are stronger at this than others.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a couple interviews between Serena and those folks, and I think you got your playbook.
hmm Yeah. Like I said, I
Sorry,
really do think she is going to be dynamite.
I'm sorry to
So
do that.
I can't wait, to see, what she can do. In fact, I know.
Uh-huh. Cool. Well then, I'm really grateful again for the generosity of your time today.
Anytime,
Um,
anytime. And again, looking forward to seeing you and everybody else at the virtual global, and hopefully in the near future, in the next year or so, at a true global conference again. Because it was probably, I've been to, tons upon tons of conferences in my life. Um, almost all of them in the scientific fields,
right.
but the Startup Grind Global Conference was just such an amazing experience. The people that you ran into, just walking around the area, it was amazing. So, you know, uh, I don't even know where to go. Just some of the company, owners, people that had incredible ideas. I ran into one of the companies that were using blockchain methodology for construction work, and they were building this whole system for this. I ran into another person that's he's actually a really good friend of mine. He's from Chicago, and he runs Gist Audio, and they basically take any type of media, written media, like magazine articles, and they convert them into audio files with real voice actors.
Sure.
And Osa is the one that started this company. And I mean, we just started talking on the corner. So there was a lot of founders. I ran into the founder of Victim's Voice, Sherry, and she's up in New Jersey, and she runs a very successful company. And the next thing I know, she was coming to New Orleans for a week.
Yeah.
So, and the final thing, if you or anybody else, if you are coming to New Orleans, please do not hesitate to look me up. I am always, even with COVID, with social distancing, happy to get a cup of coffee and sit down, and that's anybody that's coming to this city. I think that's one of the greatest things that Startup Grind has allowed me to do for this city, is to show the highlights of this city to people coming in, and the best foot forward. And again, I am very, very grateful for that. It's been an incredible experience. The people from outside of New Orleans that I've met and got to introduce to the startup environment here in the city.
Yeah, there's no better time than, as we mentioned at the beginning of the hour, that for that kind of regional, national and global kind of collaboration. So,
Yep.
Cool. It's nice to always land where you started. So, James, thanks so much again. Really great to make
All right.
acquaintance, and I look forward to having that cup of coffee with you sometime. All right.
Yes. Yes. See you very soon.
All right.
Thank
Ciao.
you. Have a good day.
You do the same. Bye.
Okay.